I have the pleasure to be here today with Jamesy Gray, one of my Ruby heroes. I started writing Ruby in 2006, and one of the things that really upped my skills early on was being on the Ruby Talk mailing list and doing Ruby Quiz. Subsequently bought the book and worked through all of the exercises, and I think I have this man to thank for a lot of what I've become today. So first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate your presence in the Ruby community, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely, glad to do it.
Awesome. So what have you been doing so far here in Austin?
In Austin, well, I have been mostly spending time with my young daughter and watching her wander around the city, and then attending a few Rails sessions here and there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And did you have anything in particular you wanted to talk to us about today?
Yeah, you said talk about whatever I thought was cool.
Yep.
And for me, you know, all those years ago when I was doing the Ruby quiz to now, it's basically the same thing, and that's improving as a Rubyist.
Excellent.
I think you know that no matter how good you get. DHH made me feel kind of old this morning when he said he'd been doing this for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And I realized I came into the Ruby community a little bit before Rails 1 release. So, you know, in that time, I've gained a lot of knowledge and come a long way. And then still, I just feel like, you know, that I can always be improving and getting better. And a lot of what I do in the community is centered around that for myself and others as well, like you know, the Ruby Rogues podcast I work on now. And
excellent work on that, by the way.
Thank you. It's a lot for me about getting to talk with a lot of great developers and ask them questions I've always wanted to ask them and have great discussions with them, which teaches me a lot, and I hope teaches other people a lot as well. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. We actually had the pleasure of having Avdi down at Hashrocket in Jacksonville recently, so maybe we'll hit all of the Ruby Rogues before we're done.
All right, good.
So how do we go about becoming better Rubyists?
You know, I think that kind of differs for everybody, right? Everybody's kind of got their own path and the different things that work for them, and you know, you hear that in the Rogues interviews we do. You know, some people, you know, treat everything as an experiment, I think is what Dan Cub said, and that's how he slowly evolves things over time. And then you know, Jose Valim talked about how he, when he was writing crafting Rails applications, he would want to write about something in a book, and he would realize it was complicated, and so he went and changed Rails to make that part better, right? So that he could make it look good in the book.
That's great. That's a wonderful way of kind of working backwards at the problem.
Right.
This API is entirely too disgusting to document in a book. Let's make it better.
Right.
That's wonderful.
So I think for everybody it's kind of different. For me, it's kind of, I'm trying to figure out how I think about programming. And one of my recent projects is I run this Rubies in the Rough newsletter, where I send out an article. I send out 3 a month. And I'm basically trying to codify how I think about programming problems. So I take a topic each time and write about, you know, what I'm thinking about or what I'm doing. Whether it's you know, working with iterators and how I think about how they work and how I choose one, or the one I did just a couple days ago was a patch to Rails. And so I literally just started from nothing, pulled the Rails source down, got it running, made a change, you know, pull requests, everything.
That whole process.
Right, and trying to talk about what I'm thinking along the way so I can figure out, you know, kind of an introspection of how I think about those problems.
Yeah, so this is an analog that's interesting to me. I've recently become quite interested in playing a game called Magic the Gathering. Long
That's an old
history.
game.
Yeah, and so it's 20 years old now, but experiencing kind of this revival and popularity. And one of the things that I really enjoy about learning it, you know, and it's one of those interesting mental problems for me, is watching people who are pros go through the process of, you know, playing a game or building a deck or whatever, and having them talk about their thought process at that same time. I personally learn an awful lot from hearing people externalize that, so it's really awesome to hear that, you know, you're doing that same sort of thing.
It seems to be a pretty popular thing in our community right now. I mean, you've got like the Peep Codes are doing the play-by-play series, you know, where they sit down and watch some expert solve a problem, you know, and they've had Aaron Patterson and Jim Wyrick and stuff, and neat to just watch how they use their editor or how they, you know, make a Ruby file or things like that. And it's interesting to pick up things like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do you have any other tips for us on how to become better Rubyists? Clearly it's going to depend from person to person. Do you think that there are things that we can all kind of glom onto and figure out how to better improve ourselves?
Yeah, I think you always have to be asking yourself, or being introspective, right? You always have to be looking at where you are and how can you go forward, and you know, measuring the things you're doing now, and you know, assuming you're not at the end of the journey, you know, that you're somewhere in the middle.
Maintaining that beginner's mind state.
Right.
Oh, that's great. So how do you know? How do you know when you're not adopting the mentality of a beginner? Like, is it that assumption that you're kind of at the end of the journey, or as DHH said, you're Mr. Mature?
Yeah, that's it. You know, it seems to be kind of a theme here at RailsConf this time around about you know, how we get stuck in these ruts, you know, and stop upgrading and things like that. I did something recently where, like, I came into Rails around Rails 1.2, which was like, you know, eons ago, and I learned a lot of Rails back then and how it worked and stuff like that. And then slowly over time, you know, Rails changed, and I learned bits and pieces here and there, and enough that I could still use it. But then recently I found myself actually going back, and I read a whole slew of modern Rails books, like Crafting Rails Applications and the Rails View and stuff like that. And I realized, wow, you know, Rails has grown up. It's changed a lot. You know, there's a lot of differences, and it was funny how much I learned, even though I'd been with Rails that entire time and using it every day. You know, it was just taking a fresh look at it of where's Rails today taught me a lot of new things.
Yeah. So that's phenomenal, and maybe that's our takeaway, is that no matter where you're at in your career, even an exceptionally talented Rubyist, you can always take the time to look back on what has happened before, where you're at now, and actually try and think about how you can improve based on that. Well, thanks a lot, James. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, Internet.